Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and the biggest news that came out from China over the past few days is actually this headline. Now, the biggest hype about China is going to shift its housing system towards the Singapore system. I have read into it a bit, and I try to understand, what's the thing, the real detail about it, behind it. This is a bit of a clickbait. It's not entirely that they are going to become like Singapore. So there's a huge difference between the Chinese and the Singapore housing market system. China is actually a lot more capitalistic. Is actually mostly private housing, in that sense, and public housing, government housing in China today is mostly reserved for the very poor people, or people who have no homes and this kind of thing. No homes in the sense that they are very poor as well. They are unable to afford. So most of the population go for private housing, and this is also the reason why there was this housing bubble, because everybody want to buy a good house, because this is a Chinese thing. We Chinese people, we always look into the future. We want to invest in the future. We want to store wealth somewhere, and we have this this perception that wealth is best stored in real estate, and which is actually true in some way. But in China, real estate is extremely expensive, because everybody thinks like this. In China, there's a lot of people, and think and since 2000, where China shift its housing system to very very privatized, because you have to remember China is actually a communist country. So they used to have entirely government housing, public housing, which is actually extremely uh standardized and uniform type, like North Korea, maybe early Russian style concepts. Then because they opened up, they went into capitalism, and they went full private, they went all in. And now they have this unsolvable problem of this housing bubble that is threatening to burst, but it consistently getting suppressed by the Chinese government from bursting. But there are already quite a number of massive housing or real estate companies that already has bankrupted. So what is all this about? So what happens is that China is now going to copy a bit, not entirely, but some of the Singapore's housing system, and mainly is Beijing, just Beijing, is not the whole of China, just Beijing, naming two big projects. So this big project is basically to build some social housing, which China has always been building, but is actually not meant for most people. It's meant for the people who are really at the lower social economic ladder, the lowest class of people, where they really have no means, and then they also want to renovate rundown inner city districts. So this idea has already have funding for it, and this funding will then help to be pumped into this real estate or construction industry, task able to lift up the construction industry, which is currently undergo a massive slump. So the authorities will be providing cheap central bank loans to the government banks to fund all these projects, which is actually what usually banks do. And then they will actually equivocate, so they will increase the leverage via other means, and then will amount to 10% of annual new home sales. So they are actually going to do more eventually. But this is just 10% in terms of housing. In Singapore, 80% of the housing is actually government housing. So there is a massive divide. And this is the plan. So the aim is to promote common prosperity, which is actually what communism is supposed to do. And it's very surprising, right? Singapore is actually more communist than China in this sense. They say that so other analysts say that this is actually to create a tightly regulated social housing market with limits to who can buy and how they can be sold to new owners. So and then they say that maybe they will actually sell back to the government and whatnot. So this is not how Singapore system. It's actually a bit like how Singapore systems work. In Singapore system, when we buy and sell houses, government houses, it will always be going through the Housing Development Board, which is the agency or the government body that is actually in charge of all housing in Singapore, and basically transaction is always go through them. So that in a way it's not wrong that you sell back to the government, and so this is actually a classified document. Apparently there was so the details is not fully public yet, so you can, as I mentioned, this headlines is all very clickbait because just like the headline here, there's going to be very clickbait because people want people to read, but this calling for a new model, and it's unsurprising because a communist country going for no total capitalistic system is quite a danger for things to to work out, and you cannot really depend on full capitalism systems, and which what will cause is homelessness. So because profit margins will be the priorities, and that will actually result in people who cannot afford houses. So apparently they also China have other problems that it's not actually not written within the article. It's actually that they have very limited rental culture as well as systems. So they have this a system of management of where you stay. It's not like you can just move anywhere you want. There is actually a count that decide that are you a local person within this city or this province. So and people who are not from that province cannot actually buy houses easily. So and then so usually what the model should be doing is rental, and then the rental system is still not that it seems, I don't claim that I'm an expert, but it doesn't seem to be very a normal thing in China just yet. Unlike in the United States, I think a lot of people rent. I think in China it's not the case. Most people try to buy, and which is why the housing market is exploding. So just to share a bit more in terms of Singapore's housing system, like I said, it comes from a very socialism or communism kind of ideology. It is to ensure that everybody has a house, have a roof over the head, and the money, it will be heavily subsidized by the government. That's the Singapore system, and it is heavily subsidized by the Singapore government system. But you have to pay it, and this money will go to the government. The government will use the money they receive to build new housing, and it is a pretty close system, with minimal funding needed. In my opinion, from the budget, yearly budget. So because when you sell houses slowly get more and more expensive, government get more money, and then they will actually able to reinvest back into the construction of new public housing. Although the government of Singapore does say that they are making losses all the time, and the Singaporeans are not very convinced about that, but but that creates a very stable housing market because prices cannot really fluctuate tremendously unless within the private resale market of this public housing. The new houses that the government put out is always very consistent, but it also sets some kind of a benchmark that the private condos, condominiums will have to follow. They cannot drop their prices below it. So fluctuation in terms of housing in Singapore is not that crazy, and you cannot also rise too high, because if you go too high, literally no one will buy it, because people will always look at the government housing and say that the government housing is so much cheaper, and people will just naturally just do this weighing of cost and benefit. So but in China you don't have this system. So this is the reason why everything just fly out of control. The prices of housing just keep flying, and real estate companies take advantage of this lack of alternative. It is some sort of like a oligarchy or monopoly where there is no alternative for the buyers. So they just build low quality expensive housing, and then which is why you hear some of these tofu dredge project that maybe you have seen on other YouTube channels, where the house are built with subpar construction materials, and the house and apartment start to break apart within a few years. So this is where the unscrupulous business models come in, because there is just no alternative for the buyers in China. So if China does indeed put their money like this in this title behind the Singapore model and to encourage more housing, I wouldn't say no they have to follow the Singapore system entirely until 80% of the people live in government housing, but let's say 50% of the people live in public housing, and that means most of the middle class and the lower class people can afford to have a house at a rate that they can afford. Because you have to understand that despite all the claims about China being very rich and powerful, most of the people is actually very poor. So, and they do not earn very high salary, and these few years there is a lot of people who lose their jobs due to COVID-19, the geopolitical battles between United States, the West, and China. So a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of outsourced companies that was moved that is in China from the West actually is moving out due to the COVID-19 scare, because China suddenly just decided to control everything, and everybody is just moving their business out to Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan. Yeah, I mean Japan just moved their own stuff back to Japan, so that caused a lot of job losses as well. So this is the reason why the entire housing model can no longer work, where everything just inflates. It's very hard to drop a price of something. So this is going to help a lot. And if they really successfully do it, then China will become extremely powerful. The economic system is going to be a lot more stable. And I think the rule of the Chinese Communist Party, or the Communist Party of China, depending on which version you like to call them, CCP or CPC, will be able to control and sustain power for much longer time, with a lesser displeasure with the government systems. So far, as far as I can tell, the Chinese people can't really tell, because they go from a total communist system, total socialized public system, housing system, moving to privatized. Things are all moving very well. They're advancing. They become richer, become smarter, nicer, good, better. Then, so they don't know that the system is actually no good. they can't tell. As far as I can tell, I don't think they can tell. So, so this is the main gist of the entire thing. But eventually, as China continue to be affluent for a longer period of time, maybe another 10-20 years, people is going to start complaining that this housing system is not working. People are already complaining, because a lot of people lost a lot of their hard-earned money buying houses that totally did not get built, or the house just break apart. But of course, this is actually in the minority, despite some of the China people, some of the channels that is reporting on China tends to exaggerate, or try to zoom in so much into that situation that it thought that is going to be the norm across all China. It's actually not the case, but it is still a major issue, because money lost and they go into debt, they cannot pay back, then they have no house to account for the money that they owe. So on the citizen level, things are very, very difficult. So even if this sounds like a very positive thing, this is going to take decades, 10-20 years before you actually see a significant results. So don't get too excited, but this is why this is a big news, because a lot of people invest in China. So construction market, it is the biggest industry in China, and they have literally run out of things to construct. So this is why China looks so advanced, because they keep building, and then they build beyond what they need, and yeah, that's the situation. So since you can't build more for bigger, newer markets, then building for people who are currently living in substandard housing, renovating, rebuilding the districts, that could work. So anyway, let's not talk too much. Thank you for watching. I'm talked too much already. And yeah, press the like button, subscribe. Let me know if this is the sort of stuff you want to hear, and I'll see you in the next update.